Airlines get up to all kinds of corporate shenanigans, and that has been especially true in periods of economic uncertainty. For example, the 1973 oil crisis, the aviation downturn following September 11th, and the 2008 financial crisis, just to name a few. In particular, the crises of the early 21st century resulted, either directly or via making a bad situation worse, in the elimination of at least 7 major US airlines, the merger of Air France and KLM, the divestment of various airline subsidiaries across the globe, and other mergers too numerous to count. Let's not forget that America West and US Airways are basically just 2 kids in a trench coat pretending to be American Airlines, just to highlight the kind of stuff that was going on within the first decade and a half of this century. On the back of that amusing example, let me introduce to you a series of corporate shenanigans which can only be described as a game of airline hot potato centered around 2 US regional carriers, Mesaba Airlines and Pinnacle Airlines. Ultimately, this 3-part series will cover the history of the airlines which eventually became Endeavor Air, Delta's regional subsidiary. With introductions out of the way, let's get started. Our story begins in early 1985 with the incorporation of Express Airlines One in Atlanta, Georgia. Led by Atlanta entrepreneur Michael J. Brady, the company was founded as part of a new airline-in-a-box concept for establishing a commuter airline to feed into a major airline partner's hub. Brady's concept was to set up a parent airline corporation to handle maintenance, training, finance, accounting, and other administrative support functions. Once this was done, wholly owned subsidiary airlines could then be rapidly established in a modular fashion to serve the needs of a major airline partner. The resulting parent corporation was Phoenix Airline Services. As it was not affiliated with any particular airline, Phoenix Airline Services would have the freedom to pursue agreements with any number of larger carriers. Around this time, Republic Airlines, then a major carrier, aimed to replace their mainline operations between smaller cities and their rapidly growing Memphis, Tennessee hub. They had recently partnered with Simmons Air, an already established regional carrier, to set up similar feeder operations at their Detroit hub, and their plans for introducing the new Republic Express product were going along quite well. Instead of partnering with an already established airline in Memphis, as they had done in Detroit, Republic signed a 10-year agreement with Phoenix Airline Services to create a new carrier from scratch. This resulted in the creation of the previously mentioned Express Airlines One. The efficiency of Brady's concept was proven when Express One initiated service from Memphis as Republic Express on June 1, 1985, just 4 months after its establishment. Initial flights were flown with 19-seat Jetstream 31 aircraft, with larger 30-seat Saab 340s coming online in July. Having seen that Express One's Memphis operations were a complete success, Republic proceeded to award them with a second contract to establish Republic Express operations out of their Minneapolis, Minnesota hub. These flights also began rapidly, with Express One initiating service out of MSP on December 15, 1985, and phasing out mainline Republic services to Aberdeen and Watertown, both in South Dakota. By June 1986, Express One was operating Republic Express flights to 15 destinations in Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. Things, however, would soon change. When Northwest Airlines, another major carrier, acquired Republic in October 1986, Express One began operating on their behalf as Northwest Airlink. Mesaba Airlines, the other carrier I mentioned in this video's introduction and the focus of this series' second episode, had been operating flights as Northwest Airlink for quite some time, and in fact, had been flying in direct competition with many of Express One's Minneapolis routes. With Express One and Mesaba now both on Team Northwest, changes needed to be made in order to streamline operations. Northwest's network planners set out to simplify the Airlink system and assigned one carrier to each market, with some cities being taken away from each and some cities swapped between each as a result. Jumping forward a few years, the economic recession in the early 1990s caused Express, like all other airlines, to undergo extensive cost-cutting programs. Of course, a fatal crash in 1993 did nothing to help these matters. While profitability did eventually stabilize, Northwest ended up buying Express outright from Phoenix Airline Services in April 1997. Despite its founding in Atlanta, Express and its relationship with Republic, then later Northwest, were mostly defined by its Memphis operations. Northwest had switched to a very successful new system of connecting flights at this airport in early 1994, further developing the relationship between the airline and its feeder. Furthermore, by October of that year, Express began selling all of its seats to Northwest for a fixed price, freeing it from fare wars and marketing considerations. Northwest handled all booking and scheduling, and even owned Express's entire fleet, which was then leased back to the airline. Further consolidation of Northwest Airlink's Minneapolis operations took place in 1997, after Express was purchased from Phoenix Airline Systems. All Saab 340 Minneapolis-St. Paul routes were transferred to Mesaba, with some of Express One's jet streams remaining at MSP under a wet lease agreement with Mesaba until 1998. Express's headquarters were moved to Memphis, and it was announced by Northwest in May 1999 that newly ordered 50-seat Bombardier CRJ family aircraft would be placed in Express One's fleet, not Mesaba's. As a reminder, Northwest owned Express and its entire fleet by this point, and Mesaba was just an independent carrier contracted by Northwest. With the introduction of these jets, Northwest Airlink had finally entered the regional jet age. A bit far behind other carriers, mind you, but they had jets nonetheless. Specifically, Express received their first CRJ in April 2000. A month earlier, the airline had joined Flight Safety International, a company which I recently had an internship at, in opening a $23 million flight learning center in Memphis to meet its increased training requirements. In other words, the airline was committed to Memphis. It was there to stay, and they meant business. The jump from a fleet consisting entirely of 34-seat Saab 340 turboprop aircraft to sleek modern jetliners brought with it a 25% increase in flights serving Memphis, a doubling of its workforce within a year, and an opening of a second hub in Detroit. By the time the Detroit hub opened, the airline's fleet consisted of 17 CRJs and 26 Saab 340s. However, 2001's September 11th terrorist attacks caused major problems for the airline, much like many others. About 650 employees were laid off, or approximately half of the airline's workforce, and the Saab fleet was divested by November that same year in order to streamline operations. This fleet was snapped up by Mesaba, who still operated a sizable number of Saab 340s. By early 2002, the financial situations of many airlines were in jeopardy. Before May rolled around, a new holding company by the name of Pinnacle Airlines Corporation was established, Express had been renamed to Pinnacle Airlines, and a new service agreement had been signed with Northwest, which would see Pinnacle's CRJ fleet increase to 95 aircraft by the end of 2004. It was around this time that, in order to provide Northwest with a much-needed cash injection, the majority interest in Pinnacle's parent company was divested. Pinnacle Airlines Corporation became a publicly traded company listed on NASDAQ in November 2003, and Northwest retained an 11% stake in the company, along with 2 seats on its board. The proceeds from Pinnacle's IPO raised $271.6 million, all of which was transferred to Northwest's pension plan. By the company's 20th anniversary in 2005, Pinnacle was ranked by Airline Business News as the world's fastest-growing airline and the 8th largest regional airline. It had 3,400 employees and was operating 134 jets to about 100 destinations. Revenues were on the rise, and their headquarters were being expanded. In 2006, a new contract was agreed to by Northwest and Pinnacle Airlines, under which Pinnacle would fly 124 CRJ aircraft until 2017. However, a contingency clause in the contract allowed Northwest to take away CRJs from Pinnacle, specifically up to 17 of them, and reassign them to a different regional airline if Pinnacle's pilots failed to agree on a new contract by March 2007. This ended up coming to pass, and starting in September 2008, aircraft were taken and given to Mesaba at a rate of 2 CRJs per month. Pinnacle's new contract also brought with it the ability for them to pursue business with other carriers. However, they mostly lacked the connections needed to make this happen. In order to fix this problem, their parent company acquired fellow regional carrier Colgan Air in early 2007. This strategic decision was made in order to gain access to Colgan's existing partners, United Airlines, Continental Airlines, and US Airways. Colgan's regional aircraft fleet continued to operate independently of Pinnacle Airlines, and it maintained its own operating certificate as a separate subsidiary of their now shared parent company. Later in 2007, Pinnacle Airlines signed a codeshare agreement with Delta Airlines, starting service on their behalf as a Delta Connection carrier. This contract provided Pinnacle with 16 CRJ 900s, owned by and leased from Delta, delivered over the course of the next 2 years. The first batch of aircraft was based out of Atlanta, Delta's main base of operations, and started service in December of 2007. A contract dispute was raised in mid-2008 surrounding Pinnacle's failure to make its timetable, which caused Delta to plan its withdrawal from the contract. However, some form of agreement was reached before the announced termination date that allowed Pinnacle to continue flying for Delta under the terms of the original contract. The dispute being taken care of most likely had something to do with the fact that Northwest and Delta had announced their plans to merge in April of that year, the plans receiving shareholder approval in September, and Department of Justice approval by the end of October. With the tie-up of these two carriers, needlessly ostracizing one of Northwest's largest regional partners was likely seen as detrimental by Delta's leadership. Moving forwards, we'll cover the story of Mesaba Airlines from start to finish and see how the two carriers came together to become Endeavour Air. However, for those complete stories, you will have to come back for parts 2 and 3 of this series. In episode 3, you'll get to see that game of airline hot potato that I mentioned play out, involving Delta, Northwest, Pinnacle, and Mesaba. Until then, hold on tight, and maybe consider subscribing and enabling notifications to stay informed as the next 2 parts are released. If I've earned it, please give the video a like, as it will help me reach a larger audience. Thank you for watching.